Hey everyone, this is Laura with Laura Godenic Astrology, and I'm here to give you the update for January 6th through the 12th, 2020. So, this is the big week that all astrologers have been waiting for, basically. Um, I'm not going to go over every transit this week just because I have a lot to cover. But this is the week where we have Saturn and Pluto conjoining in the sky at 22 degrees of Capricorn. And I'm going to go over in this video what that looks like for each rising sign. If you know your rising sign, then it's easy to know where this conjunction is happening in your chart and what area of life it's affecting the most. But first, I'll just go over a few other transits. So on Friday the 10th, we have Mercury conjoining the Sun in Capricorn. And remember, Mercury is our minds, it's how we communicate. And the Sun, especially in ancient astrology, was representative of the king or of divine knowledge. The Sun represents who we are, our identity, how we shine in this world. And so, with the conjunction between Mercury and the Sun, it could be literally translated messages from the king. Mercury messages, the king, the Sun, right? So you might have some kind of awareness come up, or like a realization, or receiving a message of some kind, whether internally or externally. Maybe something, awareness around something that's more subtle. So yeah, pay attention to that. We also have Uranus stationing direct at 2 degrees of Taurus. And this isn't normally as big of a deal, except for it's happening right around the time when the Pluto-Saturn conjunction is happening. So I think it's probably a little more important. But basically, Uranus represents where we desire freedom, where drastic and unexpected change can happen. It's where we desire revolution and where we might have revelation. So stationing direct just means that Uranus will be starting to move in a forward motion again, and will be passing over points in your chart and in the sky that it's already passed over. And so if you have any planets around 2 degrees of Taurus, or Leo or Aquarius or Scorpio, then that point will be a sensitive point for you, and you'll definitely feel the ramifications, or maybe have a realization, or maybe some clarity will come up. We also have on the 10th a lunar eclipse happening at 19 degrees of Cancer. And so eclipses in general are about times of change and kind of just almost like pretty big, maybe unexpected change. And this change usually takes about 6 months to pan out. And lunar eclipses, more specifically, are about changes where something is coming to an end. Solar eclipses are when things are beginning, or when changes are beginning. So yeah, we just had an eclipse on Christmas, actually, in Capricorn. That was the solar eclipse where something new was beginning, and now we're having the lunar eclipse in Cancer. So if you know what house Cancer is in your chart, there'll be some sort of change or adjustments being made in that part of your life. Okay, so that's all on Friday the 10th. So next weekend's going to be a pretty big deal. And then on Sunday the 12th is when we have the Saturn Pluto conjunction, and actually Mercury's in there as well. So it'll be a Saturn Pluto Mercury conjunction, and the Sun is literally a degree away as well. So yeah, I'm gonna show you guys what that looks like for all of the rising signs. So this is the chart for January 12th if you have Aries rising, and I'm using a special house system called whole sign houses. So as you can see, every house, which if you can look into kind of the middle of the circle there, you can see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 12. Those are the houses. And you can see the boundary or border, they kind of look like pizza slices. But they match up perfectly with the sign. So this is called whole sign houses, and it's just much easier to show you what kind of effect the Saturn-Pluto conjunction will have in your chart using this house system. So if you have Aries rising, and it's really easy to figure out what your rising sign is, you just have to know the time of day you were born. But so I'll let you guys figure that out on your own. So with Aries rising, you have the Saturn-Pluto conjunction happening in your 10th house of career, reputation, kind of like life purpose or calling, as well as people in authority. And if you can, I can't really show you because I don't have like a pointer, but if you look at that cluster of planets up in Capricorn in the pizza slice part of the chart that says number 10, there's like, like 5 planets in there. That's where this activity is happening for you, Aries rising. So Pluto represents kind of regeneration and transformation, but it's the transformation that occurs through trials and tribulations. And so Pluto, Pluto can be a really challenging planet. It's kind of like when you're sick with the flu and you're throwing up, it can be really painful, but it's ultimately for the purpose of getting your body well. So there's this kind of like purging component to Pluto. Saturn, on the other hand, is a planet having to do with responsibility, with duty, obligation, where we feel where we feel obligated. It's it can be kind of a heavy planet. It can often be a planet that says no to things or that breaks things down to kind of put in place boundaries and rules that will function. Saturn is associated with also time, with age, with the elderly, with grandfathers, older men in general, people in authority positions. So this conjunction happening in your 10th house, and you might have been feeling this, for at least the past year, maybe some tension to do with authority figures or with your job, or with your career. There's going to be some sort of kind of decay process or decay process, probably followed by some rebuilding up of something new. And breaking down isn't always the most fun. Thankfully, we have Jupiter coming up through Capricorn that is kind of there to save the day. So yeah, this is happening at 22 degrees of Capricorn. So if you have any planets, especially around that degree of Capricorn or Aries or Cancer or Libra, definitely pay attention to this transit. And I would say just be willing to let go a little bit. Okay. So this is for Taurus rising, and you can see that cluster of planets. The planet that looks like the H and the P, the H is Saturn, the P is Pluto. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but that cluster of planets is happening in your 9th house of travel, specifically long distance travel, higher education, religion, philosophy, court, publishing, long journeys. So yeah, those topics will probably have already been been at play in your life, I would say, at least over the past year, year and a half, maybe 2 years even. So there might be some sort of potential crisis or um, um, just, yeah, some sort of crisis or breakdown to be rebuilt in terms of maybe your plans for potentially going back to school or some kind of journey you're taking. Um, and you guys, this all depends on what aspects the Saturn Pluto conjunction will be making to your personal planets. I can't really, it's not going to be like a terrible transit for everyone. It just, it's so specifically unique to your chart. It might, if there's like a trine involved, it could be like more of a positive transit even, like there's still those themes of like breaking down, decaying, that's the Pluto, to be rebuilt, to be restructured, that's the Saturn, power structures breaking down, um, but those themes can be positive, it kind of depends. Um, so yeah, and like I said earlier, Mercury is right there in the mix. Mercury being our mind, how we communicate, messages, what we think. This could be potentially like an intellectual breakthrough, a mental, something involving your mind. Hopefully, it's not like a mental crisis. Maybe a crisis of belief or, um, yeah, something along those lines. And then, so while I'm here, I guess I can go ahead and say the third house is where Cancer is, and that's where the solar eclipse is happening. So changes around siblings, your local neighborhood, how you communicate, local travel. So ninth house being long distance travel, third house being local travel, K through 12 education. So watch out for changes that involve endings coming to those particular parts of your life. Okay. So this is for Gemini rising. This for Gemini rising, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is happening in your eighth house, which is the house of death, sex, debt, taxes, shared resources, partners' resources. Even I've heard the occult is very much a part of that house. It's kind of the house that involves like shadow material, things that people don't really talk about in everyday conversation. Think about it. Money, sex, death. Those are not like everyday topics. So yeah, with the Saturn Pluto conjunction happening in this part of your life, those topics could come up. And I don't ever want to scare anyone with astrology. But those are pretty kind of heavier topics. Like definitely the topic of death could come up potentially. And once again, depending on how this is hitting your chart, if this isn't hitting any personal planet for you, like potentially nothing major could happen to you. And we'll definitely see this Saturn-Pluto conjunction will definitely have major implications in more of a societal realm in terms of government structure and leadership, um, like country leadership, world leadership. There'll be a breakdown of how things are currently going and currently functioning in terms of, yeah, like our society, and then a rebuilding of that is hopefully more ethical and fair. But yeah, back to Gemini risings. So this is actually me, like I'm a Gemini rising, so this is all happening in my eighth house. Um, since Saturn entered Capricorn, that was, I think, when I got my first credit card. So I definitely have been exploring like credit and learning a lot about how taxes work and I got into a little bit of medical debt and have learned how to how that whole system works, you know. Um, this could be a time where you might want to like go to a therapist and talk about these kind of topics that aren't don't come up in everyday talk. So yeah, just kind of I would say be observant. Have those themes come up for you, Gemini rising, the themes of taxes, debt, death, sex, shared resources. Potentially, it could be if you're in a relationship, a partner could be going through more of a challenging time than you. Our chart isn't necessarily always about us. In fact, really only the first house in a chart is about us. Every other chart is about things in our lives, people and things and activities we're involved in. So it could be that maybe like a partner that you're really close to is going through a tough time. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it for Gemini rising. Okay, Cancer rising folk. This Saturn-Pluto conjunction is happening in your seventh house of partnerships, relationships, marriage, other people, and partnership not only meaning romantic, but also including business partners or potentially like a best friend. Um, and once again, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, you can see it. The Saturn is the H-looking symbol, and the Pluto is the P-looking symbol. Um, so yeah, Pluto representing crisis, purging, transformation, specifically transformation happening through trials and tribulations. Saturn representing hardship, kind of like cold, hard reality, boundaries that we either have or need to build up. Saturn can oftentimes say no or make us work extra hard to overcome something. So yeah, with this placement or with these transits happening in your seventh house, I would say partnership or relationships have probably been under a lot of pressure over the past year and a half to 2 years. A lot of probably transformation happening in that part of your life and how you relate to others, how you function in relationship. It's definitely going through a heavy period. Not to say that things will totally dissolve and be, ruined, but kind of the Pluto component is definitely making something in the way you relate to others or in how you are in relationships. It's making it break down and kind of decay. And for the purpose of being reborn and renewed and regenerated. And Saturn is there to kind of make sure that, like that you're going to be in a relationship that works for you, that works for both of you, that, Saturn's a planet of boundaries. So, how are you handling boundaries in your relationships? And specifically, the really close, intimate relationships. So yeah, this is like this is a house that's an angle. So the angle houses are 1, 4, 7, and 10, and any sort of big transit happening in those houses are definitely going to have a larger impact on the individual. So Cancer rising, you've probably been feeling it for quite some time, and yeah, this might be kind of maybe like a culmination piece, um, like a breakdown that leads to, hey, let's restructure how we do this relationship. And while I'm here, I'll mention the lunar eclipse is happening in your first house of self, identity, and body. So definitely changes coming about to how you identify, how you express yourself to others, and potentially like bodily changes. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you cut your hair, maybe you get a piercing, maybe you get some surgery, like who knows? I mean, lunar eclipses are all about ending. So definitely changing in some way how you identify, and with all this stuff happening, the Saturn Pluto in your seventh house, how you relate to others, how you are in relationship. So that is for Cancer rising. Okay, so this is for Leo risings. I said this in the beginning of the video, but the way to find out your rising sign, you have to just know the date, location, meaning like city and state, and time of birth. Time is really important, down to the minute, from a birth certificate if possible. But that'll give you your rising sign, and that'll tell you where all of this crazy planetary action is happening. So for Leo rising, this is in your sixth house of work, service, health, and routine, as well as pets. And once again, the Saturn can be seen as the symbol with the H, and the Pluto is the P. And you can see they're at 22 degrees of Capricorn. So Pluto being this sense of almost dying, purging, decaying, to be reborn, to be transformed, to be regenerated, and Saturn being the planet of restriction, limitation, kind of like cold hard reality, sometimes saying no. So this could be, as soon as Saturn entered Capricorn in, December of 2017, this could be challenges or hardships relating to work, to where you work. Sixth house is, 10th house is career, what you aspire towards. And sixth house is like what you actually do every day in the daily grind. And so maybe the workplace has become kind of stressful. Maybe there's some sort of restructuring going on or some sort of like upheaval. And so with the conjunction happening on the 12th, this could be leading up to some sort of culmination, some sort of peak, where, afterwards Saturn will eventually move on and past Pluto. And so there'll be definitely a relief happening. But yeah, there might be some just kind of heaviness, potentially like, I don't know, despair or sadness. Definitely, Saturn represents kind of the coldness. It rules over Capricorn and Aquarius, which are both January and February, the coldest parts of the year. There's this very cold quality to Saturn, and also a mundane quality, like what you kind of like pulling up your boots from your bootstraps and doing the hard, honest work it takes to live in this world. That's kind of like Saturn in a nutshell. So yeah, it's definitely not a fun transit, and it's not necessarily going to be like a surprise that happens on the 12th. Like you've been already living it. You've already this has been happening, for quite some time. Going back to pets, this could, there could be some sort of hardship or challenges that you've gone through having to do with pets, if those are important to you or if you have any. Potentially health concerns, the body. So yeah, all of those topics are under pressure. Saturn and Pluto can very much so function as a pressure cooker, where there's a lot of buildup and tension and, finally maybe even explosion, and then there's nothing. And then it's like, okay, now we have to build up from the bottom. That's kind of what this transit's all about. And once again, like I said, thankfully Jupiter is there to kind of come up after Pluto and Saturn kind of clean up the mess. So definitely there's hope. Not all is lost. Yeah, so that is Leo rising. Oh, and also forgot to mention the lunar eclipse is happening in your 12th house of places of isolation, including hospitals, prisons, monasteries, convents. And so, and also just places of being alone and where you're kind of struggling with dark night of the soul can be also self-undoing. There could be an ending component to whatever you're doing for self-undoing. You could find yourself wanting to spend more time alone, by yourself. It's definitely like struggling alone. maybe going on a retreat or something. So, yep, that's Leo. Okay, here we are at Virgo rising. So with Virgo rising, this Saturn-Pluto conjunction is happening in your 5th house of children, self-expression, creativity, fun, sports, pleasure, joy, love, love affairs, sex. The 5th house is definitely also associated with sex. You know, there could be that component of like crisis, regeneration through the breakdown first, potentially with, if you have kids, maybe your relationship with your kids, potentially with like a romantic lover. 5th house is not quite yet to the status of partnership, but it's more about like romance and kind of the first stages of partnership where it's just kind of like the honeymoon phase, you know? So definitely having to do with the topics of love and relationship, but also just where you go to have fun, how you express yourself, and maybe how you express yourself is coming forth to be transformed in some way. Maybe with Saturn going through your 5th house since December of 2017, there's been a feeling of limitation or not feeling like you're able to express yourself, not feeling like you're able to have fun. Saturn can be the sense of saying no. It can be an authority figure saying no, like no to fun, no to pleasure. Um, so yeah, the process of how you express yourself and how you experience pleasure and joy and how you have fun is definitely going through a transformative process, a metamorphosis, a regeneration, first through the breakdown and decay process. And then the the lunar eclipse for you, Virgo rising, is in your 11th house. So 11th house being the house of friends and groups and associations, hopes and high wishes, friends specifically in high places. So endings there. Lunar eclipses are about endings, change that involve endings. So maybe some sort of change with regards to a group that you're affiliated with, a group that you are part of, maybe an ending with a friend, maybe like leaving an organization, maybe letting go of a wish or a dream that you once had, or maybe like ending something in order to pursue a wish or a dream or something along those lines. So, yep, that is Virgo rising. So, moving on to Libra rising, all of the Saturn Pluto drama is happening in your 4th house of home and family, heritage, like your roots, your ancestral roots, your psychological roots, where you come from, and also where you live right now. As you can see, the Pluto is the P-looking planet, the Saturn is the H-looking planet. So, you know, imagine maybe that you've been experiencing potentially some drama, some challenges, some hardship with regards to home, family, where you live, where you come from. And once again, so Saturn and Pluto are meeting at 22 degrees of Capricorn on January 12th. So there might be some sort of like culmination or pinnacle to these challenges that you've been experiencing. I also forgot to mention 4th house represents either the father or the mother. I always tend to go with father as 4th house. Some astrologers do say mother. But yeah, so in case, you know, you're skipping ahead to find your rising sign, Pluto represents decay, purging, kind of death in order to be reborn, transformation, looking at what's beneath the surface of things and bringing them to light. So bringing those kind of shadowy topics that, you know, maybe like family secrets, maybe there's some sort of like component there and that's coming up to the surface. Saturn represents hardship, hard, cold reality, restriction, limitation, responsibility, duty, older men, grandfathers, time and age, um, obligation, also, our karma in some ways. It's where we have to work really hard um, to succeed in something, like oftentimes Saturn says no to us and maybe just makes us work really hard to accomplish that thing that we want to accomplish. So you might have been really struggling with regards to home and family, to maybe parents, to mom and dad, to, your extended family even. Um, yeah, and once again, I mean, the pinnacle, the peak of that is happening on January 12th, but it should get better. We have Jupiter coming up, which is kind of the saving grace of this whole thing. So, and then similarly, the lunar eclipse is happening in Cancer in your 10th house regarding changes having to do with endings. So potentially like you might be finding yourself stepping into a new career or a new calling or a new sense of purpose, or like maybe even a new boss. 10th house can be our supervisors, our people in authority, people over us. So yeah, watch out for changes with regards to career in the next 6 months. And yep, that is Libra rising for you. Okay, so this is Scorpio rising. And so once again, I just want to remind everyone, I'm using a house system called whole sign houses, where the signs match up perfectly with the house cusps. So yeah, it's just a special house system. It makes it easier to kind of show you what's happening for each rising sign. So for Scorpio rising, the Saturn-Pluto saga is happening in your third house of siblings, local travel, like within your neighborhood or within your city, um, also K through 12 education, and generally how you communicate, how you exchange with others. In ancient astrology, the third house was the marketplace where you bargained and where you interacted with like all of your neighbors who were selling their goods and services. So yeah, and once again, Saturn is the H-looking symbol, and Pluto is the P-looking symbol towards the bottom of the chart. And Pluto representing a decay, a death, regeneration through breakdown, transformation through trials and tribulations. Saturn representing cold, hard reality, restriction, limitation, saying no, making us work extra hard to achieve what we want. Time and age, older people, older men, authority figures. Um, so yeah, I mean, with this conjunction in your third house, this could be, third house is kind of like a weird, I don't know, there's like a lot of topics in the third house that I don't think necessarily relate to each other, but potentially challenges with your relationship with your siblings if you have any. Maybe there's some sort of power struggle going on. Maybe you need to like restructure the way that you relate with them, what your relationship with them looks like. Could be that you're going through a process of figuring out how to communicate better, how to speak your truth, how to like learn to talk again. Could be, anything related to local travel. I mean, um, any sort of like car problems, maybe not having a car, maybe like traveling, like in some way, like traveling, there's a breakdown in regards to how you get places. Maybe there's some sort of like breakdown and of how you communicate in terms of like using the internet or using some sort of technology. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what's happening with the third house and with that conjunction. Once again, in case you guys are skipping to your rising sign, we have Jupiter coming up after this whole saga and kind of saving the day, thank goodness. So, you know, it's not going to be all terrible. And also, once again, depending on your chart and, you know, what planets, where your planets are in your chart, this might not even be that big of a deal, you know? So just don't freak out, and I would just say observe. But definitely look to see if you have any planets around 22 degrees of specifically Capricorn, Libra, Cancer, or Aries. Those are what's known as the cardinal signs, and this aspect will hit your planets harder with those in those signs. So just keep a watch out for that. This lunar eclipse for you and Cancer is happening in your 9th house with regards to travel, higher education, foreign places, foreigners, um, judgment, court, religion, philosophy, truth. So there might be like an ending, a big change with regards to those topics in terms of like something ending for something new to come in the next 6 months or so. So be on the lookout for that. Okay, so now we have Sagittarius rising. And this whole Saturn-Pluto conjunction at 22 degrees of Capricorn is happening in your 2nd house of money, finances, resources, your things, like your stuff, and what you value. So once again, Saturn entered Capricorn back in December of 2017. And so, you know, up until this point, and probably for the next couple months, there might have been like a building pressure or sense of restriction or limitation potentially with regards to money and finances. Pluto represents breakdown through decay, purging. Kind of imagine if you're sick and you're throwing up and you're, you know, it's painful, it sucks, right? But your body, in the process of throwing up, your body's just trying to get better. I find that to be Pluto's function in the chart, is this purging, this regeneration, this transformation that can be sometimes kind of painful and very hard. It's like going into the underworld and coming back up renewed and refreshed, hopefully. Saturn's the planet of old age, restriction, limitation, duty, responsibility, hard work, mundane reality. It can be the planet that says no. So that's where kind of maybe there was like a sense of crisis with regards to finances or personal belongings or what your values are. And once again, this is happening on January 12th. There might be some sort of pinnacle or peak to this, some sort of realization with Mercury right there ruling our mind and how we communicate and think. Maybe some sort of realization around how you're handling your finances, and how you function with your finances, or maybe this sense of wanting to get rid of a lot of the stuff that you have. Like maybe you have like a lot of stuff and you want to purge it, you know, bring in the idea of purging and rebuilding into the idea of finances and things, your possessions. And that's kind of the theme for you, Sagittarius rising. And this lunar eclipse is happening in your 8th house of sex, death, debt, shared resources, other people's money, the occult. So, you know, lunar eclipse being a change involving endings of sorts, and it'll take about 6 months for, or, you know, not, the change can basically take place within 6 months. It doesn't have to be 6 months out, but also 8th house is partners' resources. So if you're in a relationship, it could be maybe a change or a big change happening with regards to your partner's resources in some way. So yeah, keep a watch out for that. And that is Sagittarius rising. Okay, Capricorn rising. This whole Saturn-Pluto conjunction with the Sun and Mercury are all happening in your 1st house of self, identity, body, how others perceive you. So yeah, the first house is a kind of a big deal, you know, or it represents you in your chart. And you know, this is like not really like new news. Like you've probably been going through some sort of transformation in how you identify, how you express yourself over the past, at least the past year, year and a half, maybe even 2 years. Once again, Saturn entered Capricorn in December of 2017. So there could have been some sort of inkling of things starting to change for you around that time. Um, I would definitely like watch out on this day in terms of accidents or, you know, breaking bones. Capricorn rules our bones, our skeleton, and our bodies. Um, so definitely don't do anything risky on this day or any days leading up to this day. There's definitely more potential for accidents. So stay safe, but don't, you know, don't act out of fear. I don't want to like ignite fear. I just want to let you know the influences in your chart. Um, yeah, so once again, Pluto representing decay, purging, going into the underworld to come up into the light of the day, kind of with a sense of being reborn and transformed. The underworld isn't always a fun place. It usually isn't a fun place. It's kind of, you know, dark. Saturn represents cold, hard reality, challenges, limitations, restrictions, saying no, whether that's you saying no to yourself through your mind or your beliefs, or authority figures saying no, or circumstances saying no. But Saturn challenges us to overcome that limitation through hard, honest work and through mundane work. You know, it's not a fun planet. So, you know, there could be definitely a dissolving and a restructuring or a rebuilding up of how you identify, how you express yourself, who you believe yourself to be, who you want to be, how others see you. The first house is the house of self. It's, you know, it's where the rising sign is. The rising sign is how you're seen by others. So, definitely a pretty big deal. Once again, Jupiter is coming through Capricorn as well, so kind of cleaning up maybe the mess that Saturn and Pluto might be bestowing. So definitely it's not, you know, it's not all bad. And also it totally depends on your personal chart and where your planets are in your chart. Definitely watch out for 22 degrees of Capricorn, Aries, Cancer, and Libra. Those are definitely going to be more sensitive points for you. Um, I won't go into like all the planets because that would take forever, but that's pretty much that. And then the lunar eclipse in Cancer is happening in your seventh house of relationships, partnership, other people, business partners. Eclipse is having to do with endings. Lunar eclipse, or sorry, eclipse is having to do with changes. Lunar eclipse is having to do with changes involving endings. So something, it might be like a partner that you have, whether it's business or romantic, they might be experiencing some sort of end or change, or maybe a relationship ending. So yeah, keep the lookout for that, and that change will take place within 6 months or so. So that is Capricorn rising. Okay, so we're at Aquarius rising with the Saturn Pluto conjunction happening in your 12th house of places of isolation, including hospitals, prisons, convents, monasteries. Um, you know, the 12th house isn't a really fun place. It's kind of where we struggle. It's the house of secret or hidden enemies. It's the house of self undoing, or the dark night of the soul. So it's kind of that place in the chart where there's a lot of struggle and strife, or possibly wanting to be alone or be in solitude. or maybe feeling very isolated, feeling like you're struggling alone by yourself. You're going through some sort of crisis alone. Um, modern astrology denotes the 12th house to the unconscious mind, or, where you go to uncover your unconscious mind to make your beliefs more conscious, to become more aware. So Pluto representing decay, regeneration through death first, going into the underworld, the darkness, and being reborn, being transformed through trials and tribulations specifically. Saturn representing challenges, hardships, limitations, delays, saying no, being told no, feeling isolated, um, mundane reality, cold reality, hardship. These two planets are not fun. And this happening in your 12th house, there could be, and maybe you might have been experiencing it all along, could be a sense of feeling isolated, of having some sort of like existential crisis that might be coming to a pinnacle or a peak on the 12th of January. Maybe not, you could have been experiencing this for the past year and a half, 2 years even. Things should definitely get better, I would say, after January 12th, because that's when Saturn moves on beyond Pluto. And so, that heaviness or that sense of restriction, like you're in a pressure cooker and about to explode, but you don't know where to go, that'll totally pass. But if you're feeling, like lost or severely depressed, or you have like some sort of existential anxiety, or you feel very isolated and alone and don't know who to reach out to, like, I would say like hopefully if you've been experiencing that, you've reached out to a therapist and you're in therapy and you have support around you, and you're trying to communicate what you're experiencing to your friends, to those who you love and who love you. Um, yeah, I mean, and I would love to hear if you have Aquarius rising, what this has been like for you. I mean, maybe just feeling isolated, feeling kind of alone, feeling, or maybe having, like secret enemies, like someone might, come up from behind in some ways and kind of screw you over. I don't want to scare you, but just definitely watch out for that. Um, and then the lunar eclipse is happening in Cancer in your sixth house of work, service, health, routine. There'll be some sort of change involving an ending so that a new beginning can take place with regards to those topics, and give it about 6 months or so to play out. Also, sixth house is pets as well. So maybe you get a pet, or, maybe a pet dies. Endings, So be on the lookout. And that is Aquarius rising. Oh, I forgot to mention, Jupiter is also in Capricorn, of course, and so that is kind of a blessing for you, Aquarius rising, because it's probably creating a lift, making things a lot easier, hopefully, like kind of, things would probably be a lot worse with this conjunction if Jupiter weren't there. So, okay, now we're at Pisces rising. So Pisces rising, this Saturn-Pluto conjunction is happening in your 11th house of friends, groups, associations, organizations you're part of, hopes and high wishes. So kind of like that which you aspire towards or what your dreams are, and also specifically friends in high places. Or maybe like acquaintances in high places, because not everyone has friends in high places. So once again, your chart is not all about you and like your psychology necessarily. The first house is definitely about you and identity and self, and then every other house is about different parts of your life. So with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction happening in your 11th house, this could actually maybe be, a friend, like maybe your friend is experiencing this transit, and maybe it's like, affecting you secondarily, but not directly. So Pluto, once again, being representing decay, death, and rebirth, going into the underworld, bringing, what's down there to the light to be shown on. It can be kind of a painful planet, painful process. Regeneration isn't always easy. I imagine, I mean, I guess I don't know how painful it is for butterflies to become butterflies. It doesn't look very comfortable, to be honest. And Saturn represents hardship, restriction, limitation, mundane reality, hard, cold reality, where we need to work very hard and diligently to achieve our goals or ambitions. But sometimes Saturn just says no. Sometimes it just says no. Nope, sorry. Here's a wall, here's a boundary, Saturn being the planet of boundaries, of walls. So yeah, this could totally be maybe a friend of yours feeling very isolated, or going through a really hard time, going through a very, like, a heaviness or a depression, or um, something like that. Or maybe you yourself have been feeling limited with regards to friends, Saturn being the planet that limits. Maybe you've been feeling kind of lonely, or like cut off from your friends or groups that you normally are a part of, associations that you normally have. There could be a sense of transformation occurring in what groups you're a part of, how you are involved in groups, what your role is. Potentially your hopes or your dreams or your wishes being transformed in some way, being broken down, being said no to kind of direct you in a direction that's maybe better for you, but still could be rather painful. Let's see. Could be someone, a friend or an acquaintance who, friend in high place. What does that mean? Someone who has social currency, social power, someone who's got social status in some way. There could be like some sort of power play happening with that person and with you. This all totally depends, once again, on where your planets are in the chart, and because different stories can be told depending on the aspects that it's making. So it doesn't always have to be bad. Just want to remind everyone. And then, yeah, eclipse happening in the 5th house of love and romance and self-expression and creativity. There might be a change in terms of how you express yourself, where you go to have fun, maybe a new romance coming into your life, or ending even. So keep a watch out for that. And that is Pisces rising. So there you have it. That is the week of January 6th to the 12th. It's a big one, I'm not gonna lie. Astrologers have been talking about the Saturn and Pluto conjunction for like 10 years. It doesn't happen very often. It only happens like every 33 to 35 years or something like that. I think it's around that time frame. And every time that it does happen, there's definitely some sort of like death, decay, and rebuilding and restructuring process that's happening with regards to whatever area of life of the chart it's happening for people. And also there's definitely always some sort of like restructuring and breaking down of world leadership, government structures, etc. So yeah, it's a pretty big week, and especially with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction happening with the Sun and Mercury. Basically, all 4 planets are conjunct. They're, within a degree of each other. And the Sun representing our awareness, how we shine, who we are, and Mercury being how we communicate and messages we receive and we give. This Saturn-Pluto conjunction with the Sun and Mercury could be also integrated with some sort of message you receive internally, externally, you know, within, without, from your divine source, if you believe in that. So just be open to what comes. And my advice is to release and to be willing to release rather than be taken from. So I've created a sheet of mantras for each rising sign to potentially help you get through the week, and you can repeat them to yourselves whenever you want, really, and maybe just offer a different perspective on how this conjunction could take place for you, and maybe how you could view it. So I hope everyone has a great week, and I hope that this was helpful. Please let me know how the week goes for you. And I'd love to hear how it goes for you. You can always comment. And I will be back again next week with another update. Okay, bye.